OCD. Now, if you're someone who has OCD, or maybe you're a parent or a caregiver of someone who has OCD, you will know how truly distressing this is. Now, I'm going to be talking about my personal experience with OCD. I have a very close family member, a younger family member who I went to therapy with, and I'm just going to talk about that experience and the things that helped this particular family member. Okay? Hi. Anyway, hi, my name's Catherine, yes, and today I'm talking about OCD because I know that there will be people out there with OCD who, for whatever reason, will not be getting the help that they need. Or you may possibly be a parent and you're on the waiting list for your child to be seen, but in the meantime you are just tearing your hair out because you're watching your son or your daughter go through extreme anxiety and you don't know what to do. Okay? I completely understand. Because actually, we hear people talk, sort of say, oh, he's so OCD or they're OCD because they've got to have things in place. But OCD is really, really debilitating. The terror and the fear that the person who has OCD goes through is immense. Now, it's not just about washing hands, although obviously it can be. And also those OCD's worries can change and morph into different things as time goes by. It might be having to repeatedly check to see if your car is locked, or it could also, it manifests in thoughts. So, for example, someone with OCD might have a thought that, oh, I've got to say Hail Mary 3 times because if I don't say Hail Mary 3 times and turn around, my mum might die. Yeah? Now, to someone without OCD, that probably sounds a bit crazy, and you think, well, surely you just say, of course that's not going to happen. But actually it's easier said than done. And if you're someone who has OCD and you're having those thoughts are very real, very real. So what should we not say to someone who has OCD? Okay, well, OCD is thought processes, isn't it? Yeah. And initially you might wish to say to someone, what they'll say, oh, I'm really worried, I think this is going to happen to me. And you just, well, just stop thinking about it. But that doesn't work. For example, if I was to say to you, don't think of a pink elephant. Whatever you do, you must not think of a pink elephant. What are you thinking about? A pink elephant. So, as I've mentioned in other videos, when we are resisting something, that resistance actually makes the thing come back stronger, doesn't it? So we can't say to someone with OCD, oh, that's just a silly thought you're having. Stop thinking about it. because it just doesn't work like that. Now, someone with OCD may develop some tools to distract themselves, but actually we need them to break the pattern, because we all have intrusive thoughts. All of us do. Yeah, we might have a family member going on a long drive and a thought pops into our heads. Oh no, I hope they're not going to have an accident. But that thought is very quickly replaced by another thought or a preoccupation with what you're doing. That thought comes, but then that thought goes. But with OCD, that thought just goes on a loop, and it continues and it continues. So we can't resist the thought, but we have to break the pattern. Now, breaking the pattern is easier said than done, but I'm going to show you a technique that was given to my family member who has OCD, and this was very helpful. Again, just a little disclosure, because I can't remember if I said, I am not a psychologist. I am purely speaking from personal experience. And the reason I'm doing this video is that I just hope that maybe if there's someone out there who's feeling a bit desperate around OCD, they can just watch this and perhaps start implementing the technique. So I have written out, very basic by the way, I've written out here. So as I said, OCD takes many different forms. So it's not just hand washing. As I said, it could be opening a car. It could be an intrusive thought that comes in. It could be worrying about inhaling smoke and thinking you're going to die. It can be all manner of things. Yeah, so what happens with someone who has OCD? So the trigger comes in, they touch the wall, and this is a particular fear for them. So then the worry is that they will become contaminated, and then that contamination worry turns into, I could die because I've touched the wall, and someone else might have touched the wall and they've got a terrible disease and I'm going to die. And then they have to carry out the compulsion, which is washing hands. And that washing hands is often very excessive. It's not just a simple, I've washed my hands and I'm done. That can be washing hands in a particular way, and then they come away and then they brush against the wall and they're back again. Yeah? And actually people who have the hand washing side of OCD, their hands can get very, very sore. Just to say, if this is something you do, Vaseline petroleum jelly is really good for sore hands. So what did my family member learn when we went to therapy together? Okay, so what we had to do is we had to list down all the triggers that they had. Okay, so also the very nature of writing things out is very good. It helps the person sort of recognize that what in front of them, that it is just a thought. Okay, so they have to write down what their trigger is. So here I've put down touching the wall. Yeah, it could be inhaling smoke, or you know, any number of things. Okay, and then we get to the worry part. which is, as I said, we can all have intrusive thoughts, yeah, but then we don't loop those thoughts. So the worry is, I will get contaminated and die. Now, this is the difficult bit. So with the person with OCD, they have to write down and list all their triggers, They have to write down all the worries, all the things that they think is going to happen to them from this trigger, okay? And then they have to write down all their compulsions, all the things they're going to do to reduce their anxiety around that trigger, yeah? Of course, that anxiety is only reduced for a very short moment of time because they will then be triggered again, yeah? So they go through and list them because it won't just be one thing, yeah? And then what my family member did is we had to go through that list and perhaps look at the one that was the least scary, the thing that they sort of didn't like, but they could sort of think they might be able to tackle. So, for example, if the trigger was someone walking into the living room, yeah, the worry would be, oh, if I don't change the remote control on the television, if I don't change the channel 10 times on the television, something bad is going to happen to that person. So therefore, they then have to change the channel 10 times every time someone walks into the room. Another family member of mine had this, and I was younger at the time, why every time do I have to, when I walk in a room, are they changing the channel? But of course, I look back, I know now it was OCD. So what they have to do with support is when they get the trigger, so someone's just walked into the room, they have the worry, oh, if I don't change the channel on the television 10 times, something bad is going to happen, okay, to them, yeah? Then they have to stop there. They can't carry on to the compulsion, okay? Because what they're doing is they're going to rewire their brain. So they're going to find out that actually they're not, by not changing the channel 10 times, so they're going to sit there in that uncomfortable, awful feeling of thinking, I've got to change the channel 10 times. They're not going to do it. And then they're going to see that actually nothing bad happened. Yeah? So we'll go back to what washing hands. So again, so if their trigger is touching the wall, yeah, they touch the wall, and then they think they're going to become contaminated and die, okay, then their compulsion is, I've got to wash my hands. So with support, yeah, maybe help the person with breathing. Right, we're just going to test this out now. We're going to not wash our hands. Okay, we're going to breathe through it. We're not going to wash our hands. Okay, you can do this. Yeah, they need support. Okay, and then they don't wash their hands. And then, oh, I didn't get contaminated and die. And slowly but surely you work through the list. You work through the list from the least scary thing up, and eventually the brain become rewired. It understands that it doesn't need to be in that constant loop, and actually the bad things that they thought were going to happen didn't happen. Now, if you're a parent and you've got a child with OCD, it can be really tough, and we just have to learn to be the most patient people in the world, because actually what that child is going through is like hell. It's like hell. And this may not work immediately. It takes time and it takes patience. Okay, so that's one technique that worked for my family member. Okay, the other technique is actually what I talk about a lot in my videos when I talk about consciousness and conscious thinking. So thinking from our conscious thoughts, not from our subconscious thoughts. So is to get the person with OCD to actually verbalize their thoughts, yes? So if it's hand washing, yeah, you say, okay, speak out your thoughts, and they need to say, I am having a fear, I'm having a thought that if I don't wash my hands now, I might die from contamination. Yeah? I am having a thought. And then we go, okay, that's just a thought, isn't it? That's not a real thing. It's just a thought, okay? And we can write that thought down, yeah? Writing things down is great, yeah? So it's like, okay, so here am I, okay, here am I, and I am having a thought, and inside here you just write, I might die if I don't wash my hands. Okay, and then you look at that thought and you go, hang on a minute, okay, that is just a thought, isn't it? Yeah, that is just a thought. So I will let that thought stay there. I won't resist it, because I know if I resist it, it's going to get worse. So I'm just going to let it sit. Okay, I'm going to look at this thought. I'm going to look at it. I might die if I don't wash my hands. Lots of people don't wash their hands and they're okay. The likelihood is that if I don't wash my hands, I'm going to be okay. Okay, so I'm looking at that thought now, and I'm realizing that that's not the truth. Okay, that's not the truth. It's just a thought that my mind is lying to me. My mind is telling me that that thought is real, but it's a lie. It's a lie. Okay, so we have to we're working to visualize and see that that thought is a lie. And another technique that was useful was naming that OCD voice. Yes, so it doesn't matter, you could call it anything, you know, OCD monster or whatever. And I would say to my family member would say, oh, I'm worried that this is, and I'd say, that is your OCD monster lying to you. That's an OCD thought. And every time they would come up with a thought, you remind them, this is an OCD thought, yeah? And maybe we're going to just draw a picture and we're going to write it down and we're going to see it for what it is. Okay? And those techniques, they have really helped, because it's very easy for all of us, whether we've got OCD or not, to believe our thoughts, isn't it? We can all sort of believe what our brain is telling us. Yeah, oh, I'm a failure. Oh, I'm hopeless. Oh, I can never do anything good. Yeah, we all have that ability to believe our thoughts. But it's when we are able to observe those thoughts and realize that they are just thoughts. The thoughts aren't us, they're just thoughts. But writing it down is really, really good. It helps with the visualization of the thought. So remember, we don't resist the thought, because that just makes it come back stronger. We say, okay, you can sort of stay around, okay. We're saying, I am having a thought. And something I used to do with my family member when they had a thought is we would sort of turn it into like a funny, playful thing. So for example, they would say, oh, I'm having a thought that because I've walked past a cigarette butt, I'm going to get cancer. And then we would say, oh, I am having a thought. And we would talk about it in squeaky voices or high, low voices. I am having a thought that because I've walked across a cigarette butt, I am going to get ill. Okay, and then just keep repeating that thought and shout it and whisper it and do a funny voice to it to sort of devalue the thought. Humour is great, you know, humour is a great way to help diffuse stress. And I understand if you're a parent and you're watching a child go through what is really distressing, you will be suffering from your own anxieties, and it can be hard and it can be exhausting. But if you can just find that strength to perhaps add some humour in, just to help make the child see that actually this is just a thought. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I hope this video, if this video helps one person who either has OCD or a parent whose child has got OCD, then, you know, I just hope it does, because I know from my own experience how awful it is to see someone who's really trapped in their mind of all these thoughts. And as I said, I'm not a psychologist. I'm simply sharing the techniques that were learnt in the therapy session I attended with my family member, and the things that help them. Okay, if you do have any questions about this, please feel free to comment, and sending you so much love. I do hope that we can all find that peace and send out love to as many people as we can. All right, don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, and have a good day. Okay, bye.